right, super. Hey, thanks everyone for taking some time this morning, and we'll have a chance to later on to have an opportunity for everyone to maybe share some. In Richland County and Livingston County in the Midlands to this really unprecedented event. I literally just left a call with some folks from around the country and Bloomberg Philanthropies, in which we were marveling at the amazing challenge that this has posed on America, even unparalleled in terms of time it's taken to unfold vis-a-vis the Great Recession or even the Great Depression. And certainly the way in which we all choose to recover from it is going to be up to our collective action, some thoughtful public sector and private sector leadership, even a role for philanthropy to play here. And would like for, after consuming some data together, like for us to have an open discussion. We've had a good bit of an active discussion amongst members of City Council over the last several weeks. Carl Blackstone from Chamber of Commerce has been very valuable. And I've had individual discussions with almost everyone I see on the screen, and thought it would be important for all of us to begin sharing all those ideas, not in our respective silos based on the industries that we might represent, the different interests in the hospitality associations, or if our interests are Northeast or downtown or East Central or wherever they happen to be. We all have a common desire to make sure that we support our small businesses, that we create an environment where our large businesses can thrive, that we continue. We even look at this as an opportunity, this crisis as an opportunity, maybe even to completely reframe and reshape the Midlands for posterity in a very positive way. There's some things that we control and some things that we don't control. And I want to kind of lay the foundation very, very clearly here. Obviously, we moved very quickly to try and stem the spread of the coronavirus as a city, passing our stay home, stay safe ordinance. Charleston and other cities and towns across the state acted in their own way. It seems like it's had some significant impact, and including the constant discussions we've had amongst ourselves, and even the governor and others, just around the importance of social distancing. It looks like America, not just South Carolina or the Midlands, is becoming quite impatient with the reality that although it has helped slow the spread of the virus, we also know that long-term social distancing can be economically ruinous. So how do you balance out the challenges of making sure that we're maintaining good public health practices, while at the very same time making sure that you're putting the building blocks in place to respond via your small businesses and others to make sure people have the opportunity to live the lives that they ought to have here in this great country. There's some things we control and some things we don't control. We have been preempted by the state as it relates to reopening businesses. We understand that. We respect the authority of the state. So we can't control the when businesses reopen. We have to understand that. We can continue to articulate, as I have, that we should see, just as the White House guidelines have articulated, a 14-day deceleration in the number of cases. We don't have robust testing across this country or the state or community. But until we see those 14 days, I think we have to be very, very respectful and circumspect in what we encourage people to do. So we can't necessarily control the when. We, however, can as a community consistently articulate the how. If people are going to re-engage in society, and we want them to, if they're going to re-engage in commerce, and we want them to, how do we do it in a way that is smart and thoughtful, that allows our businesses to earn income, allows our citizens to participate in what we know is a great community. But how do we make sure we put these tools in place so that our businesses can open and can thrive? How do we come up with the idea? We talked to somebody before about an idea of a certified, a resilient business in Columbia, Richland County, Lexington County, where the businesses are able to clearly state that we are doing these things. We tested our employees, and we can help provide maybe a platform for that happen. We are engaging in social distancing. We are, if that's impossible, we are making sure that PPE is available to our employees, maybe our residences, maybe our customers. That we are investing in constant disinfecting of our shared surfaces in a way we're of course checking for clinical symptoms every day and checking temperatures. I mean, there are different things that we can all do to ensure safety. And then also, speaking to the city manager earlier about some just really aggressive and bold ideas that we should talk about around another thing we can control, and that is how we really step up testing in the community. Step up testing and contact tracing, and also providing for isolation for those who may be identified. There's some work that we can do to help us with the public health challenge, because I'm a believer that we have an economic crisis that was caused by a public health crisis. So if we get our arms around the public health crisis, then the economic crisis will begin to take care of itself. This is not a short-term solution. We're going to be dealing with this as a country and as a world for the next few years at least. And it's just thoughtful and important that we start sharing the very best ideas as what we can do now, what we might be able to do in the short term, but we need to be thinking 12 months, 24 months deep. And we'll do some things, guys, together that will work well, and some things that maybe 6 months later we'll say, it was a pretty bad idea. But there's power in innovating and iterating and trying, even when you don't have all the perfect answers. So we're gonna engage in a bit of that too. I really just want to thank everyone for taking some time this morning. If in fact we tried to do our very best to get a good group of folks, public, private, small business, those might be affiliated with large businesses on the call. If you see some people who are missing, I would encourage you to let us know, and we need creative thinkers. We need folks who can help us work our way through this. I remain convinced that the Midlands has some of the most talented people in the world, but we don't always call on our folks as often as we could and should. This is an opportunity we all hands on deck. So I'm going to be quiet. Got Chairman Livingston on the line too. Paul, would you like to have a word? And then we're going to maybe jump into a quick presentation by Chernoff Newman. Still, do we know if the chairman's on the line yet?
It doesn't look like he is, Mayor.
Okay, all right. We'll just keep.
Mayor Benjamin, this is Leonardo Brown.
Hey, Leonardo. Hey, Mr. Administrator, what's up?
Hey, not too much. I'll just say, first of all, thank you for an opportunity to be a part of this. And just kind of on behalf of the chair and Richland County Council, we are definitely looking at ways that we could begin to facilitate, if you want to call it a reopening or a relaunch, in a safe way to be productive, both from a government facilitation standpoint as well as a good community partner. So I know we're definitely interested in hearing what the community is saying. We have some initiatives that we are undertaking, and we certainly want to make sure that is inclusive of the community as well as our other governmental agencies. So appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this.
Thank you, Leonardo. Yeah, this is a time, y'all. This is a time to be a possibility government. I mean, we don't pretend to create jobs. It's so many of you on this call. You create the jobs. We need to make sure that we kind of create the platform that allows you to live up to your full and God-given potential. So I'm going to step out. I had an opportunity to sit through a call last week, which Chernoff Newman, Fenton, Overdyke, and some others presented for small businesses. some of the insights that they'd achieved in some polling from across the Carolinas, and asked them if they would distill that down to just South Carolina, maybe share some indication. I know right now we're living in an environment where we're all just consuming so much information. And I say information because I hate to use the word data, because sometimes it's not really data, it's a whole lot of opinion, depending on which channels you watch or what finds its way to your cell phone. So I trust these guys in their work. So I thought it might be worth sharing with the broader group over the next several minutes. So Fenton, if you guys are ready to roll, let's go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Peter Lamont, and to everyone on the call, my name is Peter Lamont, and I'm joined, more importantly, by Fenton Overdyke, who runs our research department. This is a very abbreviated version of our data so that you can get a gist of it. There's a deeper dive on our website at chernoffnewman.com. But to the mayor's point, information is key, but more importantly, data is key, having facts. And why that's so important is that, as you'll hear MUSC say a great deal, is we need to monitor and respond. We need to be paying attention to that data and responding accordingly. What this data is going to show is that South Carolinians have a commitment to do what it takes to get back to whatever normal is going to be. But there's also a great deal of anxiety, and that's what's important. We took a look at North Carolina and South Carolina, and what we're going to show you is the South Carolina data, of course, but it deals with everything such as travel plans, eating habits, just how they feel, what they're doing to change their behavior. And so, like I said, very abbreviated, and I want to turn it over to Fenton so that he gets to the meat of this. And we're obviously available at any point afterwards during this, depending on how you want to handle it, Mayor Benjamin, to answer any questions. Fenton, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Peter. Just very quickly, as the mayor indicated, this is a statewide survey of South Carolinians. It's a sample of 500, and it's balanced with respect to ethnicity, geography, et cetera. Like Peter, I'm going to turn my video off so you can focus on the presentation itself. I'll skip topics. Typically, I kind of go with the tell them what you're going to tell them approach, but in the interest of time, let's just jump right into the data. So one of the first things we ask consumers is, okay, as it relates to the coronavirus, how are you doing? And you see, the scale goes from close to meltdown to pretty zen. And we're happy to see that this is not a state of panic. Although when you combine those first two bars on the left-hand side, you get to 19, that's about 1 in 5 South Carolinians who say, listen, I'm really not doing well. So while it is not an overall environment of panic, it is one of great concern. South Carolinians are concerned about coming into contact with the coronavirus. A lot of people are concerned about becoming ill. Nearly 2/3 of our state's population say, yeah, I'm worried about not only coming into contact, but also becoming ill. People are starting to crack under the pressures of some of these, constraints and restraints that we're under. But most people realize that while you see about 1 in 4 who says this could end by the summer, most South Carolinians realize we're in this for the long haul. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some doing. And here, this slide tells a lot, because we're asking people, to what extent are you concerned about the health of your health and the health of your family? And to what extent are you concerned about your family's finances and your financial situation? And this is where the rub takes place. People don't want to get sick, but they do want to get back to work. They're concerned about their financial situation. So if you look at the bottom of this slide, what you see is 53% of South Carolina households say one or more of these things above have happened. In some cases, it's something very minor, like for me, working from home. But a lot of people have experienced a cut in pay, reduction in hours, been furloughed, and lost a job. I mean, that 12% can look like a small number. Then you have to consider we live in a state of, roughly 4.5 million people. That's 450,000 people who have lost a job. The good news here, particularly in South Carolina, is that there's high confidence that their job will be there when the pandemic ends. As a researcher, what I'm always looking at is that top box score. And when I see over 60% of South Carolinians saying, I am very confident my job will be there, I take that as a good sign. By market, you see we're a little more positive here in the Midlands than other parts of the state, particularly at the top box level. 66% of people in the Midlands saying they are very confident their job will be there. We also ask people, what do they miss? People miss a lot of things. They miss the old way of being. They want to get out to eat. They want to socialize. People, they miss their children being in school. They miss their children's school activities. When you look at the percentage of people who say, I miss something very much, the number one thing is they miss their children being in school. So there's a lot going on this graph, but let me briefly take you through it. So 96% of South Carolinians say they are now practicing social distancing. We then ask, what activities are you going to continue once the pandemic ends? And so while that's going to drop 26 percentage points, that still leaves it at 70% of South Carolinians who say, I'm going to continue to practice social distancing. And just to the mayor's point, think of the implications that has on restaurants, opening businesses, et cetera. People want to get back to their old ways. They're accepting the new normal, but lots of these behaviors are going to continue once things open up. And listen up, people say, and again, this is what people are saying. Oh, this environment is so volatile. It kind of depends on the next news cycle, the next report. But in the mindset of the consumer, this is where they are right now. Post-pandemic, a lot of people saying they're going to cook at home more and go out to eat less. They're going to stream instead of going to the movie theater, order food to go instead of dining in. A lot of people saying will continue to work from home. And to a bit of an extreme, perhaps, post-pandemic, about a third of South Carolinians right now say they will continue to wear a mask in public places. Clearly, the timing of this couldn't be worse for the travel and tourism industry. 65% of South Carolinians say they have already canceled or postponed a trip. And we asked them about their confidence, their ability to take a summer vacation. And you can see most people don't think that they will be taking a summer vacation. Again, that is where the mindset is now. We're going to follow up in the coming weeks and see how things are changing. But as of right now, people are canceling trips and not confident they're going to be able to take their summer vacation. Here's a real bright spot in all of this. Listen, if you have school-age children like I do, this has been a struggle for students. It's been a struggle for parents. It's been a struggle for teachers. But general satisfaction, and this is among people with school-age children, is really high with the job the education is doing with respect to be it overall communication, the quality of online learning, getting the right amount of homework, and most importantly, with all these changes, feeling that their child is going to be prepared for next year. This is changing us in so many ways. And at the beginning of the pandemic, there was food scarcity. People were hoarding lots of things. What struck me about this graph is people are concerned about the availability of groceries now. And this speaks to, they understand that this is a long-term thing. More people are concerned about groceries in the coming weeks than they are now. These types of things don't affect all people equally. Overall, when you look at 58% saying I'm concerned about groceries in the coming weeks, you see women much more concerned than men. Households with children under 18, much more concerned than others. Those of us with children in the house know how quickly groceries can go, and so I understand that concern. And lower income, more concerned than those with household incomes above 25,000. Sometimes transportation is an issue. There are food deserts. There are rural areas where there just aren't many options for getting groceries. And of course, the long-term implications about how these behaviors might last and impact us in the future. Again, like we talked about, cooking at home more and ordering food to go instead of dining in. We then ask people, okay, there's a lot of, this has impacted us all negatively. What good, if anything, has come from this? And well, some people said, listen, I don't really think much good at all has come from this, or, I haven't given that much thought. A lot of people really are enjoying spending time with their family. Our lives are so structured. Our timelines are so tight. It's, the kids get home from school, they're off to whatever sport, they're studying, we've got the opportunity to slow down. And, it's interesting too, as I sit at my desk, doing work, getting work done, reading news that's not particularly good. I then go out in the neighborhood and it's like it was when I was growing up. You see people walking around, jogging, riding bikes, walking dogs. It's almost that we've returned to a simpler time. And a lot of the comments that we got related to people kind of realizing what's important and focusing maybe on what we need more than what we want as a society. So I took you through a lot of information very quickly. Peter, you want to recap?
Yeah, I think that is, and once again, there's a tremendous amount of information out there that I'd recommend you take a look at. We're also, here's our contact information if you want some follow-up. We're limited on time. I believe we've gone over our time, but what I would just say is we as a region, we as a state, we are all adjusting to this overused phrase of the new normal. And what we want to do in providing this ongoing research, and there will be more, is just to go to that phrase I used earlier, allow everyone to monitor and respond accordingly to how our consumers are feeling about the situation, because we can open up all the stores, but if no one is feeling safe enough to go to them, then we're back at square one. And with that, I think we'll wrap up. Mayor Benjamin, I'm not sure how you wanted to proceed, but
no, that was excellent. Both of you, thank you. And I saw the longer presentation, so you guys did a great job condensing it in a meaningful way. Hopefully, you can stay on the call and maybe take some questions after we get there. It'll be another 10-15 minutes max. Is that all right?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, thanks to both of you and Chernoff, Newman. I know I also have several of our city council people on the call, and I know Mr. Rickman is on the call, and Daniel and I have spent a good number of hours along with Mr. Brennan and Mr. Davis and all the rest of our colleagues talking about this. Daniel, did you want to have a moment to say a word before Melissa went into her presentation? All right. I'll come on back to it. We've been trading text messages as we do. So I want to quickly let Melissa Lindler go ahead into her presentation. Melissa Lindler in the Office of Business Opportunities, Ryan Coleman, our Director of Economic Development, along with our finance staff and others have really been grinding over the last several weeks. I think really moving very fast, I might add, in making sure that some of the relief that some of our small businesses have needed to get through some of the tougher moments. And obviously we got some great relief coming from the county as well. And we have Erica Hepburn Wade on with Leonardo and the county team. They've also put 7 figures out to help small businesses and nonprofits, also helping deal with everything from food insecurity to also just some of the immediate small business needs. So we're seeing a good bit of regional leadership. But I wanted to give Melissa just a quick moment to go over what she and Ryan and our finance team have all been doing under Teresa's leadership, which we've been very happy with. So Ms. Lindler.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back in here and try to pull it back up for us.
I did also want to make one more point. So this is a public meeting, as I mentioned, which I'm not sure if it was clear, this is a recording. So we are recording this. We're going to share it via YouTube. So I just wanted to make sure that if we wanted to guide our comments accordingly, everyone had that notice that at least for the next hour or so, you're all politicians like that. So you have to watch everything you say and everything you do. Keep that in mind. As soon as we get through this presentation, we're gonna have a big discussion about how we truly work together to build a pandemic resilient economy. We're going to ask folks, since we have about 3 dozen or more folks on the call, maybe just to use the raise your hands feature if you don't know how to do that just yet. I think everyone's kind of getting used to Zoom by now. If you raise your hand, I'll call on folks one by one. All right, but go ahead, Melissa.
Thank you. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor Benjamin, council members, and everyone else that's on the phone. Wanted to give you a brief update on where we are with our small business stabilization program and the loans, forgivable loans that we made available since our last meeting last week. As I shared with you last week, our council leadership, our mayor, city manager, because of the urgency and the need of our small businesses right now, we were able to get an additional $400,000 added to the program by council on last Tuesday, bringing the total to $1.4 million allocated to this program. So to date, we have awarded 283 small businesses totaling $1.256 million. We have $143,000 remaining. This is an increase of about 63 additional small businesses that we were able to fund since last week. We will be funding additional ones today and tomorrow. But we're also, in the meantime, we know that this funding will not last very long and there's still a need out there. So I'm going to share with you some other funding available that has also been made available to our small businesses since we last spoke. One thing that we have been looking at is additional CDBG dollars from our community development office for some economic stabilization funds that may be come available later this year, probably in August. And I will let Ryan talk about some things that we're doing. One thing I want to say here, though, is that we are, as our last presenter mentioned, it is a matter of constantly monitoring and getting responses from our community as a whole of what their needs are. So one thing that we're going to do in working with OBO, economic development and community development, is do a community-wide assessment of what the needs are, not only with our small business community, but also our consumers, to make sure that they're comfortable as these businesses start to reopen. We know that it's going to be a balancing act between making sure our businesses are ready and prepared, as well as our consumers are also comfortable with coming back and starting to patronize different businesses within our community. So we are going to be doing some additional surveys. Our survey will probably come out, the CDBG community-wide survey will probably be coming out towards the end of this month. And I'll let Ryan talk about some more specific analysis that we're going to be doing in regards to reopening, where our businesses are, how comfortable they are, and how prepared they feel in the current climate in opening their businesses. Ryan, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for that, Melissa. We have been working over the past week, a lot of coordination going on between our offices and all 6 of our business associations to kind of start to address some of the community uncertainty as far as when to open a business and how to safely reopen. I think the point was made earlier. The folks at Chernoff Newman hit the nail directly on the head. It's not just good enough to kind of throw open the doors and be open for business. You have to put the safety protocols in place, and then the community, you also need to have that level of consumer confidence that it's safe to go out and shop. And so that's where we've put together a short survey that should be ready to go out. We could possibly get it out here in the next day or two. I think the questions are pretty much in place, have mostly been finalized, and then we'll work and get that loaded into a survey instrument, and we can start to promote that as well. Businesses are ready to reopen, but I think, based on the feedback that we've gotten from the business associations, there's just a lot of uncertainty out there, and folks want to be open for business, but everybody wants to make sure that they're doing it in a safe and responsible manner, and that I think they're looking to the city for guidance as well. So that's something we're looking to do here in the short term in the next few days, that will kind of hopefully give us some good information, and we can work with businesses to address kind of some of that feedback, and then going forward, looking more long term at, we've seen a huge amount of community outpouring, in support of small local business. The city will reopen at some point. And so, we really need to capitalize on that and become a long-term shop local community. There's tremendous support for local businesses. And so, we also want to think long-term, getting out of this crisis of, how do we continue to support our local small businesses, not just when they need it most, but every day of the year. And so we'll be working to pull together some information on that as well, and hopefully put together a long-term program to support our businesses.
And I'm going to thank you, Ryan. I'm going to add to that too. The mayor also and city council put aside another $100,000 for the reopening of our businesses, knowing for assistance for small businesses when we get to that point, that we know that they're going to need some additional assistance, maybe some marketing. How can we show, as the mayor mentioned, the certification piece, that this business has followed the protocol, they're ready, they have a sanitized environment, they know they're protecting their employees, they're protecting themselves, and they certainly have the health and safety of their customers in mind. But we also know that we're going to have to do something also to increase consumer confidence in revisiting and going out there. So some things that Ryan and I, Economic Development Office, have been talking about is some dual things that we can do at the same time to, level both of those areas, in terms of building the confidence up of our consumers, as well as making sure that our small businesses are ready to go when they are reopened. Something else that has also taken place, something I did not mention in the last slide, was we have, since our last meeting, we have sent out letters to both our state and our congressional delegation asking for additional funds as well, to put towards our local efforts, because local municipalities, we know our community, we know our businesses, we know what their needs are, and we have the ability to get the money out there quickly, given the urgency of the situation that we're in. Additional efforts, additional funding that has been put out there. I want to congratulate Richland County. We've been working with them. They've been a great partner, and they're just as committed as we are to making sure our small businesses and our nonprofits are thriving. On Monday, April 27th, they released their COVID-19 pandemic relief grants for small businesses and nonprofits, $500,000 for small businesses affected by the economic downturn, as well as another $500,000 for nonprofits addressing community needs, such as food insecurity for low to moderate income households, rent and utility assistance. The SBA, of course, everyone knows, they have also released additional money into our PPP program under the Payroll Protection and Healthcare Enhancement Act. And we're calling this, and they call this, as SBA mentioned to me last night, PPP2. Most of you remember South Carolina received 22,933 of our businesses in the last round of the PPP funding received funding from this program in an amount of $3.8 billion, which is significant, which is a lot of money, but we have a long way to go. And for this second round, even though I don't have the actual state numbers, we do know that part of this PPP2 legislation, it placed an additional $320 billion into the PPP program, an additional $60 billion into the Emergency Injury Disaster Loan Program, and an additional $60 billion as a set aside for small, medium, and community lenders. And I want to say that our local community banks, our CFDIs, Optus Bank, the South Carolina Community Loan Fund, they have been fundamentally at the forefront of making sure that our small, local minority businesses have access to this funding. And they're not moving as quickly as the bigger banks are that have more personnel, but they're certainly doing it. They're stabilizing these small businesses. They're giving that assistance to them, the one-on-one community type of assistance that we were not able to see in the last round of funding. I also want to say that unfortunately, some of the larger banks are referring them, even though they have the ability and access to funds at the bigger banks, they're still referring them, the smaller loans to these small banks, even if the customer is doing business with those banks. But Optus Bank and South Carolina Community Loan Fund, especially Optus Bank, they've really been at the forefront of making sure that those loans make it into our smaller community. Thank you.
No, thank you all, both you and Ryan. And I mentioned that Erica Wade's on the phone, and so is Jeff Rubel, our Director of Economic Development in the county. I want to thank all of you for your work in this space. As comprehensive as that report is, we all know, just as Melissa indicated, it's the tip of the iceberg. We got a lot more we need to be doing in a number of different spaces and doing it to scale. And obviously, crisis gives you a wonderful opportunity to really think bigger and think differently about the way in which we do business here. So I want to go ahead and have an open discussion. We had two great presentations, and ask folks, if you can, again, to use the raise your hand feature, and I'll call on folks in order, just to try to do my very best to maintain some semblance of order. I think everyone's still muted right now, and I think I got Mark James. I see Mark's hand up. So Mark, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and making the first comments. I'd really be interested in hearing how this is affecting the commercial real estate right now, and then maybe also long term.
Hey, Steve, I appreciate this, and I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the call, and the information here is great. I did have one question, I guess, as it relates more to sort of the statistics we're hearing about. I think in the county, there's somewhere around 900 confirmed cases. And I'm curious, is that and when we hear all of these statistics in the state and the city and the county, things like that, are those cumulative from the beginning of when we first started counting, or are, if the virus typically, for those who show symptoms, lasts 14 to 21 days, those who have kind of rotated out of a sickness period, leaving that list, and so it's 900 active cases in the county, I guess is the question I would ask.
Mark, I'm not a public health professional. I only play one on TV, and I consume copious amounts of data. But that would obviously be an indication of those who tested positive. And I'm not exactly sure maybe the follow-up question to that. Obviously, some people I'm sure have the virus has passed, so the number would be less than that of the known active number of cases. I would also submit that the same DHEC that reported those 900 plus cases also indicated that there were at least 9 cases for every known case out there. So probably 10 times the amount in this county alone and across the state. We've even seen some studies as across the country. There are two reports out this morning. One, the CDC is finally looking at wastewater and stool that indicates that studies out of MIT and a company called BioBot and others that show that the proliferation of cases and the presence and well beyond. So that's one way of saying I wouldn't get caught up in the numbers. What we need to do on our part, I'm speaking the convening authority and maybe the contractual authority of government, is let's test as much as we can. We indicate people who are infected. Let's find ways to isolate them. Let's do contact tracing, so those of us who can continue to participate in as normal life as we can right now, that we can participate. But as of yesterday, I mean, we still have some significant infection cases of infection. The governor says that we plateaued. We're still, depending which report you look at, 45th to 48th or 49th in per capita testing in the country, and the entire country is behind. So But the simple answer to your question is yes, those would be the number of cases indicated, not those who have, quote unquote, recovered or passed through. We have seen, obviously, some people look at the 14-day cases. There's something that popped up on my feed today, maybe from the Post or the Times, that indicated that the virus was active in one individual for well over a month. So we're learning more and more about this virus every day. This past week, I think they rolled out four new symptoms that we should be looking for. So as we try to get our arms around that as best we can, I wouldn't want to rely too much on those numbers as an indicator. We should be doing exactly what we're doing right now on this call, whether we were in Columbia, Charleston, Greenville, Topeka, or Des Moines, Iowa.
Right.
We need to be thinking about how we move forward, how we do as much local as we possibly can, and creating almost this confined economy in which we're supporting ourselves, with or without state government, which should be at the table, with or without the federal government, which has come to the table and needs to step up in other ways as well. I wouldn't get caught up in those numbers. I think I'm more interested in trying to figure out how we can help our realtors and those who rent from them, and the patrons who patronize those businesses that lease from you, and really just doing everything we can to create that the way of thinking that Melissa referenced, and that Fenton and Peter referenced in their presentation. We got to get our citizens to a point where they are convinced that maybe not everywhere else in the country or everywhere else in the world, but at least right here in the Midlands, that we're doing everything we possibly can to make sure that they and their families are safe and secure, so they feel comfortable re-engaging in society at the way that we all think is important.
Well, and Steve, I guess I would follow up. The reason I asked the question is I do think a lot of the public perception and a lot of how we respond and how we get people comfortable needs to be tied to some degree to how serious is and prevalent is the current situation, and if we're using information that is I think about the poll that was run by Chernoff Newman earlier, and I think that if you cut on the news, you're going to see information that could really be alarming to you, and I want to be aware of that. I've got family members that have been impacted by that, but also I think it's real important for folks to feel like they can be comfortable moving out in the community, socially responsible manner, using a lot of what we're seeing in the grocery stores and other places for distancing and being wise, but also at the same time, the need to get some semblance of private enterprise and businesses back up open. I think we've got to get, from the city's perspective, we got to get some pressure on USC to figure out how they can open in the fall. I mean, some of the discussions about those guys not opening, that'd be devastating to the local economy. The city's finances would take a huge hit, and no expectation that it's going to return to the way it was 60 or 90 days ago. But at the same time, we got to start pushing. And one final thought from a real estate perspective is the need for the city to continue to have planning commission meetings, to have DDRC and BOSA meetings, whether it's through Zoom or other methods, to continue to have plan reviews and inspections and things like that, so that our business doesn't stop. Because if growth can't take place because the entitlement process is stopped, then the starting it back up is going to take even longer. And so
Absolutely.
With that, that's kind of my final thoughts on all this, and just keeping some of this in perspective, I think, is important.
Sure, and I'll make sure. I've had the opportunity to participate in 2 of the last 4 meetings that General Caslin has with his team at USC, and they've been very helpful. And I'll make sure I share those thoughts. They've been very, very, very thoughtful in the process in which they're determining how and the unique status of the university being a large campus in an urban environment, the demography of Columbia with citizens coming from literally all students coming from all around the world, as to how they do reopen, probably phase and do it responsibly. But I'll make sure we share those thoughts. As to the second issue, you may already know, but we are moving forward with all the land use boards meetings this month. So we've been very thoughtful and intentional how even way back when we were going through a list of essential and non-essential businesses, making sure that the construction process was able to continue going on as one of maybe the areas not affected by the early information we were receiving about the virus. But the importance of making sure that there's public input, robust public input in the process of the ERC and those planning commission was something that we really wanted to make sure we addressed, and looks like we have a plan in place now to do so. Madam City Manager, did you want to jump in there?
If I could, Mr. Mayor, just for clarity, legally, until we, as the mayor just mentioned, implemented a robust public engagement piece, more than just what we've already been doing through Zoom, because obviously that requires internet access. And so for the public, the vast majority of the public, to ensure that everybody is counted and everyone has the opportunity, the city is now invested in another platform, which of course we had to research because many of these platforms obviously are being hacked and et cetera. So we wanted to make sure before we invest, it was going to be the right platform. But starting in May with the land use boards, even before the next virtual council meeting, we're going to do that. And it has the platform allows for people to call in. So we're hoping that this is going to allow for that public input that will pass legal muster, as well as every week, Mr. Mayor, which he gets a lot, but all the council members are getting from my staff a weekly development report, which we're monitoring really closely. And it's not showing that any of utility plan, pre-construction reviews, record drawings, stormwater reviews, tap sales are being impacted in a major way. So we have continued to make sure that the legal reviews for that, as well as all of the reviews through engineering, are continuing, and we're sending that report out weekly and monitoring it closely. So if any of the development folks on the phone want to see that, it's available as well. And just, you know, trying to balance safety and health and common sense for our folks who have to be in the field, with continuing to make sure that as much as possible, we can continue to deliver services.
Okay. Thank you, Teresa. We're calling Carl Blackstone, President, CEO of the Columbia Chamber of Commerce. And again, if you also want to contribute, please just raise your hand in the participants box. All right.
Hey, good
Carl?
morning. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for everybody participating today. We need as many conversations going on as we can as it relates to opening back up. And I think the folks from Chernoff did a really great job in really talking about consumer confidence and consumer sentiments as we begin this dialogue of opening back up. To that end, the Chamber has put out a playbook of opening up. It's on our website at columbiachamber.com. And it's really a conversation starter. We're not like you, Mayor, we're not in the medical field, but we are trying to help our small businesses give some guidance on how they can open up. But I would be very interested in hearing from others on this Zoom call on how they plan to open up, what their thoughts. I don't want to throw anybody on putting anybody on the spot, but Christian, I'd love to hear how you are planning to open up as a restaurateur who's done a phenomenal job in Columbia, what your concerns are and how you plan to roll out.
Can everybody hear me? Is my microphone on? Okay, cool. We are not planning to reopen just based on government allowing us to, whether that be if the city decides the thing's going to open or the state government allows things to reopen. Until we feel we're ready to put our best foot forward, both to the public, but also for ourselves. The talk about currently allowing restaurants to open with outdoor seating only makes zero sense to us. We are better off, in most of these scenarios, we are better off remaining shuttered and in a hibernation mode than we are opening up, bringing on staff and operating at a reduced capacity. Asking us to do that would be the equivalent of asking someone to run a marathon with a broken leg. 50% capacity does not mean our rent goes down 50%, that our payroll goes down 50%, or cost of goods go down 50%. So I'll refrain from swearing because the mayor asked me to. We are screwed in so many ways as being the gathering points. The restaurant industry is completely different than any other in that our entire raison d'etre is simply to bring people together to congregate. And that's what we've built our businesses on, and our financial models are based on that. We are very low profit. We are a very low profit sector. If you have a good year, you're looking at 10% profit. You reduce your capacity down to 50%, and you may as well just plan on closing a couple months later. I won't get into all the shortfalls of the government's PPP programs and such, because those are too numerous to list here and they don't concern us. What I would say is, if we do see capacities, if we see a safe opening, which we were vehemently against most of the proposals of getting restaurants open at a certain point, like in, I think, May 11th was what they were talking about. And I'm just watching the numbers on a daily basis of the number of admissions for COVID. It doesn't seem like we are slowing down at this point. So in 2 weeks, we don't really feel like it would be a safe time. It's why we stopped doing takeout. And so we're kind of prepared to wait out most of the entire month of May until we feel it's safer to do it. And maybe perhaps by that time, some of the restaurants that are going to open early, who are almost forced to open early based on the way the way the PPP has to be used. If we see that it's safe to do so, and maybe capacities go up to 60, 75%, we probably will, which in that case, and I'd already mentioned this to the mayor before, but what restaurants, at least like mine, would like to see being on Main Street and having that ability to do so would be maybe an additional temporary variance to allow more outdoor seating than perhaps we are currently okayed for. We're fortunate in that we have the space next door to us where First Citizens is, and they are our landlord, that we could put more tables outside to perhaps make up for the, say, 25 to 40% of seats we will lose on the inside. We will be looking to local government for the guidelines with which they'd like to see us reopen. But if you've read what the SCLRA has already put out there, it's a pretty comprehensive plan as far as safety goes and all that. And to be honest with you, even prior to COVID, it really wasn't much different than what most restaurants were already doing: constant hand washing and such. So, I mean, I want to be back up and running as quickly as possible, but after seeing, I guess I would have to know the questions that were asked by the Chernoff survey, if they were open-ended questions or if they were leading questions that led people to say that they were going to stay home and cook more at home. most people I know that I've spoken to can't wait to get out and are tired of cooking at home. So I hope most people don't stay home and continue to cook. Although, I mean, that's great. I think the return to working on their gardens and their yards and cooking at home has been good for everybody. But I hope everybody is kind of jonesing to get back out, congregate with one another at restaurants and bars. What that's going to look like remains to be seen. Won't even get into the uncertainties of what may happen if we have a resurgence of this, which is why we're erring on the side of caution, and our plan to stay closed as long as possible before we would rather reopen to a cleaner, safer environment than to reopen under a questionable environment. So that's kind of where we stand right now.
Thank you, Christian and Carl. I wasn't sure if you were done, Carl.
Yeah, I am. Thank you very much.
No, appreciate you. Jeff Rubel. We can't hear you, Jeff, if you're talking already, buddy. Taylor, could we unmute all for a second?
Jeff is unmuted. I'm not sure that he's talking.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to him. Let's see. Greg Hilton. Hey, Greg, you might unmute, buddy.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for putting this together. We appreciate your time. Thanks for allowing some of us out there in the entrepreneurial world to join. Yeah, I'm not sure if you have a specific question you want me to answer, or you just want me to share perspective.
Yeah, I just know a lot of the conversations we've had are, I mean, as Christian mentioned, one of the I think probably secrets of his success is that bourbon and all of his other businesses have been places you get up close and personal with people. I mean, that's been kind of we haven't had a chance to really spend as much time talking about some of the effects this might be having on some of our tech entrepreneurs or ways we need to be thinking about kind of going forward. So this maybe some brief musings would be great.
Sure, musings I've got. Yeah, so I mean, a couple of things. I think everyone's responsible based on sort of their worldview, and I tend to be optimistic about things. But also I think there's some really good evidence out there. I mean, listen, this is a catastrophe, and we're seeing the first couple of waves of businesses that got hit hard: hospitality, accommodations, tourism. Many of those may not recover from this thing, and then it was retail, and I think it's going to be making its way down into the remainder of the economy, and that's the part that's scary. I'm a little less worried about the virus from a public health standpoint, only because I don't know how much I can really do about that. I am worried about how deep and how long this economic recession or depression is going to be. That being said, we've been talking to a lot of folks, and we've got a ton of entrepreneurs in the SoCo community, and lots of friends that we're actively engaged with, and there are some incredible stories of like founders and small companies making some pretty significant pivots. If for everybody on the call, if you're just really not feeling great about the world right now, I would encourage you to get out there and find some of those stories, or from the standpoint of like what we can do from an economic development standpoint. It might feel like lip service, but there are some powerful stories out there that I think we have an obligation and an opportunity to share. I mean, whether it's the guys at Zverse or the folks at Wedge Media, essentially completely turning what they were doing before on its head and doing some incredible stuff to provide PPE. They're actually hiring people. It's such a powerful story. I think it's really rough out there for a lot of people, and this uncertainty is absolutely killing folks. We're kind of fortunate, at least within the SoCo community, because we've got a really diverse group of members, and We have lots of folks that are in the digital space. And so the work from home thing isn't that big of a deal for them. And a lot of their business is still continuing because they are able to conduct business. They're not so dependent on retail and brick and mortar. We obviously are, some chunk of our value prop is brick and mortar. It's workspaces, folks that are being entrepreneurial and doing creative work. And that part sucks right now, right? I mean, we're abiding by the ordinance. We're essentially closed to non-essential members, and it is really tough. It's emotionally draining for a lot of our members because they're going crazy at home with kids and trying to balance not just having a job, right? A job has a steady paycheck, and even that is sort of in jeopardy right now if they're not thinking about it, they are. But these folks are, raising kids, working from home, and building and trying to, maintain some semblance of a business right now. And so we've conducted a ton of meetings with folks in the SoCo community that are in distress, and they kind of fall into two buckets. They're either like, we're okay, right? We're able to pivot and move some stuff online and we're surviving, or they're like, we love being a part of this community, but we're going to have to stop that because we're going bankrupt. And I think that's the toughest part about what's going on out there, right? A lot of folks with a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. In terms of our plans to open as soon as, right, the city and the state, maybe more so the city, the leadership says that we feel comfortable, this is the time to do it, that we're working on a set of protocols that will allow our members to both be productive and feel safe. But I don't think we made some changes to kind of create value in different ways. I don't think those are going to go away anytime soon. Zoom happy hours and digital workshops and all these different things. I think that's probably going to be the new norm for a while. But so in general, I think the entrepreneurial community, is typically a community of folks that don't have a lot of margin to begin with. They're trying to build something that, they're bootstrapped, or they're, in some cases, they've raised some capital, and it's a pretty tough time to be launching something. That being said, we've got a really resilient group of people in Columbia, and I for as many bad stories as I'm hearing, I'm seeing stories about people with true grit and being resilient. So, this also brings up one other thing that it doesn't have much to do with the startup community, the entrepreneurial community, but it strikes me now that a lot more people are working from home, that the part of our government that I think a lot of people look to for infrastructure build out is even more important now than it was before. And maybe it's not roads, but boy, how incredible would it be right now if we had gigabit internet speeds everywhere in Columbia? Imagine what a service that would be for every single citizen going on. And I just looked to a place like Chattanooga that, they had a little more control over their infrastructure there. I think they're partners in that system, or at least they have a deeper partnership with their providers.
They're the owner. They own it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just think I'm trying to just think about ways that we can be better future-proofed when, not if, when this stuff happens in the future. And that kind of stuff for me feels like the new roads, and then there's this whole other conversation about, the spike we're seeing in people walking and biking and I would love to see that not go away, right? For that to continue to be pervasive. But, I think it's just really tough. I'll echo everything that Christian said about the federal programs. They've been an absolute disaster. The good news is, I think we had about 30 SoCo members that either applied for EIDL or PPP, and about 15 of them have finally started to get at least some level of confirmation that they're getting something. But it definitely, those were not programs that were geared towards self-employed folks and folks that were sole proprietors and so folks that were independent workers. And if you're not familiar with any of those terms, it represents about a third of our entire economy right now, y'all. So there's a lot of folks that fall into those categories that do not meet the criteria for a traditional small business. And I think that we may have let that community of people down, definitely on a federal level, maybe less so on a local level. So I'll shut up now.
No, that was great. That was great, Greg, and appreciate it. And would you mind sharing those protocols that you've been developing for SoCo with Ryan and others, so we can kind of digest that, as well as I think it feeds back into Mark James's comments earlier. The stories around Zverse and Wedge Media, make sure we have those as well. We've been compiling some personal narratives in the work that we've been doing with small businesses, but hearing the way that some of our innovators have been innovating, and I think getting some of those good stories out there, people need them right now more than ever. So share those, and if we can, whatever we can do to help amplify those, we want to definitely do that. Jeff Rubel, are you on?
I am back. I'm back with you. Thank you. And sorry about the earlier technical problem.
Oh, it's all good. Yeah, please go ahead, bro.
Yeah, well, thanks again for including us. This is a great session, and I applaud you for doing it. As economic developers, we often are focused on the big drivers in the economy. So we focus a lot on the major employers, whether those are manufacturers or the large shops here in town, such as Blue Cross, Aflac, Colonial. A number of the office operations didn't miss a beat. They just started working remotely. We've been very encouraged. They are doing well, operating full out. On the manufacturing side, additionally, a lot of those companies have just kept right on going. One of the more interesting examples was the Chinese company Jushi. Jushi's headquarters, their hometown is Tongjin, which is southwest of Shanghai, not that far as the crow flies from Wuhan. So they never missed a beat out there. They started taking temperatures at the door. Everybody wore a mask, and they never missed an hour of work from what we can tell. So they just adapted and they kept moving. The only companies that we saw really stop and furlough were companies in the supply chain, such as automotive, the Koya Bearings, which has about 500 or 600 employees. They furloughed and stopped because they just didn't have anybody to sell to. Their customers, Toyota and Ford, had shut down production. But outside of that, by and large, a lot of the companies here are still going full out. They're making payroll. So there's a lot of encouraging signs in the economy that we're going to be able to position ourselves coming out of this. Last, we already taken the opportunity while things are a little bit slower to do planning. One of the initiatives we've been doing is looking at how to grow the IT sector. So we're studying that, but we also started looking into biotech and medical device, just because that's such a strong sector. And I think coming out of this pandemic, I think what the experts are telling us is that a lot of that manufacturing will be repatriated. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities. We're working with the city and the university and SCRA and some other partners to identify potential companies and really identify what our competitive advantages are here in this market. And that'll be one of the things we try to do is target those companies and repatriate them to the Columbia market. So happy to answer any questions, but thank you again for allowing me to participate.
No, that's all awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for sharing that. And I think we need to, as necessary, amplify as many of those stories as possible. Raj Champanary, Raj, you got some thoughts on? You're curious to hear about the hotel sector. I know everyone's struggling right now. Love to hear how you guys are being impacted. Maybe some thoughts about moving forward.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I hope everybody is doing well and keeping healthy. As you know, our industry came out of the slow season in November and December, and typically our busy seasons are March and April, and we have taken a major hit to the extent of almost reduction in business of about 96%. We are remain open for business, most of the hotels, due to several reasons. And that leaves us exposed to the very minimal travel which comes from different cities and different states. So currently, I think one of the things that we are focusing on is mainly to be sure that our guests and employees are safe and healthy, and what are we doing standard operating procedures in terms of keeping them safe. All the brands, Marriott, Hilton, have strongly worked on trying to introduce all of these operating procedures, and also also a concern about potential COVID-19 related liabilities as we expose ourselves to people that are coming from, various states and cities. And as things grow, hopefully, we will start seeing people making that move, but it doesn't look like we will see travel, particularly business travel, which we're very dependent here in Colombia, for some time. Leaving the leisure market, again, strong months are coming for leisure markets, concerts and graduations, and none of that is going to happen. As you know, gatherings of more than 100 people or so are perhaps not going to happen for a very, very long time. We remain optimistic. Our employees are still working, although majority of them have been laid off. But I think most of the hotels, for example, our hotels, we have 10 to 15% of our employees working 24 hours. Our business has to remain open 24 hours because we do still get the odd reservation coming in. And it's a challenge. We really learn something new on a daily basis. But currently, our biggest focus is how do we reduce any COVID-19 related liabilities? And so the industry is focusing on that. The brands are focusing on that. And we have already implemented various strategies where, as staff are now going to be required to use masks, picking a guest, or when they're in the building cleaning up. We've got similar things like the grocery stores where social distancing is encouraged within 6 feet. And, but again, the challenges are hard because it's different. Our business is dependent on external travel, and then in turn, restaurants depend on business that comes to us. For example, in Colombia downtown, there's so many hotel rooms. You know that restaurants, when hotels are running 80 to 90%, those guests are going to dine in the restaurants as well. So we understand that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Raj. Kyle, I didn't ask you to bring any of your products with you or what have you, but what kind of interaction have you been having with some local businesses, those who are trying to address some of those different concerns, making sure their customers are aware, making sure folks know kind of what they're doing? Have you seen some pretty good interest out there? I think you might still be muted, although it doesn't look muted on your screen. I can't hear you. I don't know why. There you go. I think
now.
Yeah, you got you now, buddy.
All right, great. Yeah. So obviously, telling stories of how businesses have had to pivot. That's something that we have been doing a good bit. As we're a business that does a lot of signage, vehicle wraps, that type of thing. And obviously, with businesses not necessarily having that type of money to spend and not opening new businesses, we've seen that there is a new need. And, that is when it comes to communicating social distancing, when it comes to communicating how businesses are open in different ways, communicating to employees about hygiene, proper hygiene. And so, we've spent some time developing, especially kind of, our target is for the small businesses. And, we've seen that, kind of the larger businesses have a team of people that are thinking through this for them, right? That have a team of people in the HR department that are going, hey, we're going to need this, and having somebody going through their buildings and seeing the types of signage and stuff they need. But a lot of small businesses are just trying to figure out how to survive. And they're not even, they're maybe don't have the ability to think through, what am I going to need once I open up? How can I communicate to my customers? And so, I can I'll real quickly share my screen and see if this works. Just some simple stuff that, we've developed. Are you able to see any of this?
Not yet, no.
Let's see. There we go.
Yeah.
Just simple, whether it's, some of the stuff you see throughout, kind of grocery stores right now, kind of the footprints, kind of reminding people to stand 6 feet apart, the wayfinding signs, directing people to go certain ways in and out, just entry type stuff, reminding folks to wash their hands, to stay home if they're sick, whether it's for your employees or for customers. Obviously this is the new way that we're going to be doing things, and kind of visually communicating that to both our employees and our customers is going to be necessary before any of these businesses can open back up. That, for businesses to open back up safely, they're going to need to have this type of stuff. So we're trying to figure out how we can communicate that to businesses, how we can get in front of them to help them with that. We're kind of offering a kind of a safety evaluation for any small businesses that are, as they're looking forward to opening up, that one of our team members or myself can kind of visit their location and kind of walk them through thinking through, hey, where are kind of these spaces where you're going to need to remember to remind people? Where do you need to be spacing people out? What do you need to be reminding your employees, kind of throughout as you open back up? So, I think that's a lot of what the kind of the display and sign industry is moving towards, at least for the meantime. And, that's where we are right now. So.
That's very helpful.
Mayor, could I jump in for a moment?
Please, go ahead, Teresa.
This is really important. I think what Kyle is mentioning, it may be getting in the weeds a little bit, but I think it kind of brings the whole discussion around to some of what Mark was mentioning earlier, what Christian mentioned. We've got staff on the phone now, our ACM over development, Missy Gentry's, texting saying that we've already got the application, should be online by Tuesday, for the outside dining piece that Christian was referencing, as far as additional space for folks to dine outside if their inside space is limited. But we'll probably need this group in additional discussions, because as a government entity and having to put some of those rules and regulations in place, it then creates the opportunity for what Cal's talking about, as far as signage and directing people even on the outside, if we go in that route. And then we want to balance safety with not being overly burdensome to businesses. So it'd be great, as we continue the discussions, to hear from everyone on this call, some of the businesses like Kyle, what they offer, if the city's going to have to get involved with, assisting if we're asking for these additional opportunities for businesses to dine outside. Does the city then get involved with helping with some of the signage on the sidewalk areas and all that? So I don't want to get in the weeds too much, but it does beg the question of ADA accessibility. It begs the question of adjacent businesses and impeding on adjacent businesses. And also, we're just talking about restaurants now, I think, from what Christian raised, but retail spaces as well. So we just want to reassure everyone we're already starting to think about these things, but it's going to be a new norm, as everyone's saying, and we'll need a lot of input so that it's not overly burdensome to anyone as well. It is a staff level decision though, Mayor, so hopefully that'll help too with how quickly we can turn, these requests around for variances and the like.
No, that's all good. Now, I found this edifying all around. I don't see any other hand. I'm sorry, Sam Johnson. Go ahead, Sam.
Mayor, always forgetting about me, man. Mr. Mayor, appreciate your leadership, and I've enjoyed the comments. Kind of to echo Teresa's last point, and then to Carl and Christian's kind of comments earlier, Ms. Mayor. I've done a good bit of reading this week, preparing for this this call. I would just love, and it maybe if this group meets again, kind of to Teresa's last point, I'd love to know what does that environment look like that creates a safe, kind of feel for folks to want to come out and feel comfortable coming out. Kind of looking at the market, right? So what allows the market and the economy to start rolling again, whether that's space, creating more avenues for space, kind of to Christian's point. If there's other variables in there, I look forward to reading what Carl and the chamber have put out and seeing what some of the other folks have mentioned on the call. But I'm just curious, not sure if, certainly we've talked about restaurants, but other businesses, what allows for people to feel comfortable being out there, if it's mandating masks, if it's making sure that testing is available in some type of way for different communities, different types of businesses. But I'm just, I don't have that answer, but I'm very curious as to what allows people to feel safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's
well, can I jump in?
Yeah, is that Daniel?
Yeah.
Go ahead, buddy.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for taking the time. It's been very informative. I do want to be a little blunter, and I apologize I'm outside. I actually had to try to work today, but I think one of the things that's going to help the public is I think we need to gear up and take all these guidelines and everything and package it up so people know what to do when they're going to start, number one, and start teaching people. And secondly, you need to provide people with the numbers that are realistic. Sam, your point is what makes people feel comfortable is knowing the true numbers, because every day somebody's telling them, oh, we have all these cases, but they're not telling them how many have recovered. How many if you add 20, how many did you minus away? 50, 10, 2. They want to feel comfortable. Because right now, the active caseload is probably less than 1,400 in the state of South Carolina, 5.1 million people. So we're quarantining 99% of the people. And so I think we need to give them the guidelines. People want to slowly open up. And we got to trust people. They are going to make their decision. If they're going to dine out, they're going to take out. I think it's going to be a slow start. I think we all agree. And if we tried to open today, it would be a huge mistake. But opening up in the next several weeks and staging it out, is a good plan. It doesn't make sense for us to even talk about that if we don't have this package together. And I think the guidelines that have been presented by the Restaurant Association are very important that we get that. And those tools like Kyle has, the labels and helping people figure out how do they maximize their space without interfering in their neighbors. And we're going to have some businesses who aren't ready to open up even in a month. But there are other people who can't afford not to try to earn some money and start moving forward because they have loans, they have inventory, they have a whole lot of things. And at some point, when Christmas says we've hit over the peak, MUSC says we've hit over the peak, I don't know that for sure. None of us know that for sure. But we can see that our overall case numbers are balancing out, which I think is where we were supposed to be, which is flattening. So I hope that what we can come out of this group is that we give the set guidelines and slowly let people get open and put the trust in our people and our businesses. If we don't trust either one of those, then we just need to stay shut down, period, and tell them that we don't trust them to do the right thing. We got some hot pockets, and we're going to have to deal with that as well. And that's continuing testing, that's putting more pressure on folks to keep the social distancing. But I tell you, there are a lot of businesses that are really, really scared, and a lot of them who may not open up. We've never been in a situation like this. And I think we got to be very proactive of taking the talent and the things that have been said and harvested a plan and a guidebook to let the people move forward. And I really appreciate all spending. We've been on here an hour and a half, and it's great to hear this. And I hope that we can continue this and try to get something moved forward.
Well, thanks, Daniel. Thanks. I know that we have several members of council on, and Mr. Brennan's on. He said to tell the group he has screaming kids in the background, so he's not going to unmute his phone. But he also believes that messaging is so important, and that we have an effective and safe reopening when we do. I'll say this, and that we're going to wrap. We've been on the call for an hour and a half. I think it's obvious we need to have several more conversations. I took down some really good ideas right here. We're going to go back and look at, obviously, we're looking at the restaurant associations, a list of guidelines we're going to look at what the chamber's done, and obviously there's some other information from the CDC and others that we need to be looking at. But I will tell you, I don't want to say consumer confidence, because we're not just talking about commerce. We're talking about citizen confidence. We're talking about people feeling comfortable putting the most precious things in their lives at risk. We're talking about our families and those that we love, our health, protecting this one temple that God's given us. How do we safely and thoughtfully engage back in as much of a normal life as possible, ease back into one as we fight this invisible enemy, an enemy that morphs and changes by the day we learn more about. Regrettably, this is against the backdrop of a very low level of confidence in the federal government. I'm not talking about the Senate, the House, or the executive branch, but being able to rely on information at the national level that you might normally be able to rely on from public health professionals. Sometimes politics gets in the way, and it's amplified in the media. Even what happens on the state and local level. That's why I really believe that a very judicious approach to how we share and consume data. And I will say this: I don't care if we have idle chips. I don't care. It doesn't matter if we have 1,000 active cases or 100 active cases or 100,000 in the Midlands. I think we just want to know what we have. And if we know what we have, and we can effectively identify folks, we can do contact tracing, we can isolate those that need to be isolated, and yes, we can engage in more policy making that allows us all to create the environment where everyone feels comfortable re-engaging. Of course, recognize that we're also interconnected and interdependent, and we could put a box around the city, a box around the county, or around the Midlands, and realize that people come and go every single day. So how can we put some structures in place? And this is doable. I mean, for some of us are old enough to maybe even approach this as a Marshall Plan for Columbia. Some of us are not that old. We might just say we want to go beast mode in testing and tracing and just do all the things that we should be doing. And if we do that, we can begin, at least in our own corner of the world, begin to create, in a very short period of time, I might add, create that level of confidence that might allow folks to, businesses like those of you on this phone, to reopen sooner, especially as the state relaxes the regulations, and certainly for your patrons to want to re-engage with your businesses, because we're doing what we should do on the local level. We have identified at least $100,000 that City Council set aside to try and help ease that process. So engaging in if it's copious signage, or obviously, as Teresa and her team mentioned, accelerating new ordinances that might get us to where we need to be based on where science and data tells us. But really want to focus a lot on testing, and if that helps many of us get to where we want to get to a lot sooner. So this is a conversation that's going to continue. I would ask all of you if you can think of others who need to be on this call. The next time we probably as soon as next week, to be honest with you. If in the interim, if you have ideas, and those of you who shared some ideas, I'd ask you to send those back to Taylor Wright, who may have sent you the invitation to be on this call. Let's share those ideas, and let's get an action plan that's built for Columbia and Richland County and the Midlands. if we do that, then we, and Taylor's email address is in the chat room, taylor.wright@columbiasc.gov. But if we do that, then we can really start building some confidence and as to how we can, at least at this point, build a much more pandemic resilient economy on the local level. And I think it inspires confidence, and that confidence sends people back into commerce in a way that's safe and in which they can feel comfortable. So we're going to meet again, and my sense is it probably needs to begin next week. Let's see if we can get some progress on a few different actions. I did want to make sure I clarified one thing, and Teresa may have referenced it briefly. There, other than the curfew, there are no local restrictions on businesses right now. We have been preempted by the governor. So who's essential, who's not essential, who can do what, those all, and it appears that the governor, along with a number of others, other governors in blue states, red states, purple states, the whole 9 yards, are trying to figure out ways to re-enter into commerce and the economy. It does not appear that citizens are overwhelmingly there yet. So how do we do what we should do in our respective roles, at least try and create that environment again in our corner of the world? I think that's our real challenge. Send us your ideas. I want to thank everyone for being on, all the small businesses, all the government officials, all of you who run our hospitality associations, and your input. Let's think really big here. This crisis gives you a major opportunity to think of new tools, to think very big. If it's as Greg mentioned about creating more opportunities for Wi-Fi and gigabit communities. I mean, there's some real opportunities here to think very broadly about how we can change things going forward. The conversation I had, and I'll wrap up with this, on the call with a number of public finance and budget officials from around the country just before I got on this call, I recognize is that some communities, every community is very similar, but some are in dire straits right now. I mean, really dire straits. We all expect to see significant budget shortfalls as we try to meet essential services going forward. Every single revenue stream will be arrested to some degree. But if you look at cities in the state of Ohio, they receive on average between 60 and 70% of all their income from payroll taxes. So you imagine the way they're structured, and it's different in Connecticut, it's different in South Carolina. But across the board, we'll see some property taxes, business license fees, water sewer revenue, hospitality taxes, accommodations taxes. We'll see all those things affect in some degree. And I think across South Carolina, much like Columbia, you'll find local governments have been pretty good stewards of taxpayer dollars. So we'll have an impact, but we'll have to ease into the general impact of that on the folks that we charge with serving. We need to be looking at this as an opportunity, as Jeff Rubel mentioned, to do this right. If we do it right, we'll not only inspire our own citizens, we may also actually attract some folks from other parts of the country and parts of the world. This is the kind of community they want to be a member of. I know all of you have inspired me to believe that for the last 10 years. I know we can get through this incredible life-changing event together. So thank y'all. God bless y'all. Let's plan for another meeting very soon. Everyone who shared something, share it with us. Email in with us. Cal, and see some more of your work as well. It's going to help inform what we do. So y'all take care.